everyone. I'm Ivy Rivera. I'm a psychic medium, a tiny no airwalk, and I own a school called the Ivy League Psychic Academy. We are talking about breaking generational curses. We are also going to look at the myths, okay, that lie therein. There's a lot floating around out there still, and while some of it sounds sort of comical, sometimes it gets so bad that it's debatable. Is it possible there's a hex on your family, a curse on your family? Why is there so much accumulation of bad luck? So I want to start with that. First of all, these concepts of magical hexes and curses are not real. It is absolutely possible for someone to put negative energy out into the universe. This we talk about all the time. What is the reality behind these magical curses and hexes? Well, they're not real. We can manipulate energy. We can send negative energy, of course. We can think in toxic ways. That's a given. And that can absolutely affect your level of prosperity, health, positivity. But we all as individuals come to Earth with the capability of protecting ourselves. And no individual has the right to literally take over your energy and abuse you. They can psych you out. They can set the intention to do so by all means, but they're not with that power. And if we start to believe that they do have that power, what we're going to see is that they are given the power by you. So don't ever hand that over to anyone else. What really happens is not a hex or a curse. It's actually psychological abuse or negativity, toxic habits that get handed down from generation to generation. And those, if you ask me, are far, far worse and more powerful than any kind of magic spell. What we see here is that people have dysfunctional lifestyles and they don't bring healing into their own personal lives. Now, this can happen because they didn't have the type of mental health care available to them. It can happen because they rejected it. It can happen because during the times, men, this is a great example, they were told that that's not something men are allowed to do. So let's say maybe they're abusive, they have anger management issues, maybe they drink, then that wreaks havoc on the family and it gets passed down from generation to generation. So that's the truth behind that feeling that there is a hex on the family. Okay, so that brings me into number 2. Can a hex be broken? A lot of people in my field, I don't associate with them, but they have convinced people that, and it typically starts right at around $550, that for about $550, right, $550.99, that they can remove a hex. And there are plenty of spells and things like this that people have told, healers have told people to do over time because it makes them feel more liberated. They know it doesn't make any sense. A great example is the trick of the egg. Okay, so this is sort of a Puerto Rican technique. You tell someone who thinks that they have a curse or a hex to put an egg in a container under their pillow at night, and they sleep on it. And if they wake up and the egg is broken, then the hex is lifted, the curse is broken, all is right with the world. And if it didn't break, then there never was one. These are tricks. Obviously, this isn't something an egg could fix, right? So we need to be realistic that when people are saying to you that they can remove it, that's not necessary. There is nothing to remove except for the psychological damage, okay, that's been done. So instead of looking at magic, we want to look more at things like therapy, behavioral modification, receiving the healing and mental health care that you need, self-care, self-love, breaking the bad patterns and habits within the family so that you're the last one, you're the last generation to have that going on. Number 3, myth versus truth. People look at their family and they say, this is bad karma. We have bad luck. And there are plenty of religious beliefs that would back that, that would say, you're right, your family's cursed, the whole family's cursed. It's bad karma from something you did wrong in a previous life. This is your punishment, this is your payout. That also doesn't exist, because karma is actually about lessons. And with lessons comes free will. So any human at any point over the course of their entire life has an opportunity with a karmic lesson to take the high road versus the low road. It's not written. It's not destiny. Every obstacle, every opportunity that comes up is a chance for you to learn and grow and choose the right thing over the wrong thing. So the only thing feeding bad karma is you, okay? That's an illusion. So your whole family didn't come here with bad karma. Neither did you. Now, what we really want to observe more is that some of the bad luck, what looks like bad karma, is coming from heredity. So you may have, down through your bloodline, real legitimate obstacles there, like mental illness or drug and alcohol abuse issues, addictive tendencies. Anger management seems to be something that's innate. There could be many reasons why you have seen something repeatedly and it's taking a toll on every single generation because it's in the DNA, it's in the bloodline. But so much of it is habitual. So again, you can be the one to break it. And even if it is hereditary, it's like nature versus nurture concepts here. Even if it is hereditary, that doesn't mean you don't have free will. That doesn't mean that you can't choose in those moments to go high instead of low. All right. So that's okay. That's not a written sentence just because it is in the blood. I want to start talking about a couple different observations that I've had with this concept of generational curses involving my own self, my family bloodlines, my clients, my students, friends. One of the things I've noticed is that if something is coming up, if it is hysterical, it is historical. I notice that people tend to handle normal life events, catastrophes even, with a little bit more calm and security. They're a little bit more level-headed, even if the circumstances are outrageous. But if it is connected to their past, if it is historical, if it is connected to family trauma, they can fly off the handle at the littlest thing. When you notice a certain level of anxiety, depression, drama, emotional meltdown, instability, a sense of being overwhelmed, I can't, I'm going to die, this is the end. If it's hysterical, it's historical. Let's stop in those moments in life when you feel that way, and let's take a look at where that might be coming from. So I'm going to recommend in this class, as I've done in many others, that you keep a journal if you seem to have a pattern of these types of problems, and you take about 10 minutes. It really doesn't take more than 10 to 15 minutes. Once you've sort of calmed down a little bit, and to go inward, and you just silence yourself, and you ask your guides, your ancestors, to show you what it's about and what the root issues are. Now, if you're going to therapy, this may come up, but not if you hide it, okay? So if you have a good therapist, this is a time to bring things like this up. Well, last week I really had this crazy meltdown out of nowhere and I don't know why. Don't dismiss those things. Those aren't little things, okay? It's like a roadmap. I think one of the important things to do with number one, if it's hysterical, it's historical, is to also look back at family patterns and personalities. Well, it's just my mother's personality that she was a toxic worrier. She just worried and she was busy all the time and all she did was talk about other people's problems and woe is me and all these horrible things could happen and no one's life is up to her standards and what if, and then she was, sick and had all these problems because she literally manifested that. That is not necessarily a personality trait. That could have come from environment. That could have come from generations before her handing that down. So start to pay attention to what maybe was personality and what was actually based on patterns of toxicity throughout your family line. Examine everyone. Okay. How did people talk about them? What did they do with their lives? You may also want to take a good look at the ones that got away. I'm one of them. When you look at your family, you'll notice certain dysfunctions, and I think every family has them, but some are pretty severe. And what families tend to do is outcast, black sheep, point blame at the one that got away. There's usually one enlightened person who says, not me, never again, this ends with me. And that person is a threat to the system. So take a peek at who that was. Maybe that was you. Kudos. Now, just because you leave, just because you set boundaries with them, just because you've decided it's not going to be you, you're not going to hand it down, doesn't mean you've resolved the issues. You still have to do all the shadow work. You still have to do all the therapy and the hard work, the effort into the alchemy. You need to convert all of these hardships from pain to positivity, from toxicity into lessons, and apply them. What a lot of people do is they say, well, I'm just never going to marry. I'm never going to have kids. I'm never going to get involved. Is that really the best solution? I mean, if you're just not feeling that, you don't want that, then that's your personal choice. But are you avoiding things just so that you don't spread your toxicity? Then it's still there. Okay, be honest about where you are. You also need to realize that your reactions, whether you're the black sheep or not, whether you got away or not, let's talk about how your reactions to anything in life is probably their reactions. So sometimes I hate to admit it, but I will just react to something and I'll hear my voice and I think, ew, I'm reminded of someone in my family who is super toxic. And I think, where the heck did that come from? No matter how many years I put in effort to change the way I think, to change the way I feel, to change the way I see, to change the way I react, sometimes it just pops out. It is so embedded in us that a lot of your thoughts and reactions are theirs. Okay, so start examining yourself, being mindful on a day-to-day basis. Let's talk about number 2. Different ways that people get hit with what feels like a generational curse and how it does tend to pass down from one generation to another with society backing it often. We tend to see 3 different things: disempowerment, a sense of being degraded, and deterioration. So when I'm talking about disempowerment, what we see is younger individuals looking at their lives and starting to notice, usually through interpersonal relationships, a love affair, friendships, they tend to notice that something's off, that maybe they're inappropriate in the way that they respond when they should be more sensitive. Maybe they're detached, they're cold, they're unwilling to feel or to give. Maybe they overgive. Maybe they have no healthy sense of boundaries. Maybe they're a wounded healer. They give, but they're always a victim. They never receive. They're a martyr. Maybe you're cold. Maybe you're mean. You have a tendency to be abusive yourself. You're not always like that, but that pops out. Where is that coming from? That may be coming from a sense of being disempowered. When someone feels disempowered for extended periods of time and or is raised by many generations of people who feel disempowered, and society especially has kept them in that position, or they, in their family dynamic, have stayed or been kept in that position, eventually that's going to turn into anger. That's going to turn into abusive tendencies. That's going to start to look like narcissism and things like that. So instead of judging yourself, be honest about the way you interact with others. Be honest about areas in your life where you do feel disempowered. And remind yourself that that doesn't have to be who you are. You can help yourself. You can protect yourself. You can, even if society isn't going to treat you with like equality, you can fight for what's right and be an active participant in that movement. Okay, you're not as disempowered as you think you are. Now, this leads into being degraded. Okay, so number 2, feeling degraded. When we feel degraded, it doesn't always require that family or society is doing this to us. We very quickly adopt this ourselves. Humans are quick on forming habits, especially when it comes to degradation, defiant behavior, self-destruction. We are good at internalizing what we were shown or what we were told or how we were treated cruelly, and we start just automatically doing that to ourselves. And the younger you were exposed to this, the younger you were, the easier it was to start doing this to yourself, okay? You may notice someone treats you like garbage. You're 28, you've never been treated like garbage before. But a 6-year-old who's been in that environment their entire lives is not going to know the difference when it happens every day. So it becomes our inner dialogue, and this sense of being degraded leads to things like shame, guilt, feeling unworthy. Now, when we look at this, and if you hear nothing else tonight, hear this. If you don't stop this behavior, you will never understand that you're worthy of having anything. When we talk about not feeling worthy of anything, we tend to discuss this in our society and in sort of new age circles, and everyone wants to talk about self-love and self-care and things like this. We say, you receive the love that you believe you're deserving of. And it's all sort of romance-based, or it's all based on your relationships. But I don't even want to get into that today. Obviously, yes, it's important. And if you find yourself in a series of toxic relationships where you're overgiving or you're being abused, that would be why. Or you're staying in a safety zone, you can't get intimate with anyone and let your guard down. But I just want to talk about simple things today. Like, do you think you're unworthy of taking a break from work? Do you have workaholism tendencies? Will you not treat yourself to some downtime on a regular basis? Will you not purchase anything for yourself? If you go and you buy something nice for yourself, are you afraid to use it, wear it, put it on? You don't want to use it up. Are you always coming between two decisions and feeling like, I want to pick this one, but you pick the other one instead? And you really do it so habitually, it's like such a tick, you don't even really notice that you did it. Where are the areas in your life where you feel unworthy to give yourself the healing, the time, the attention, the self-care that you deserve? That's coming from shame. That's coming from being degraded. Somehow you think you're not worthy. I want to talk about the third area, deterioration. I see this the most when we talk about families that come from a long line of slavery, or we talk about people who come from a long line of poverty or whatever it is, okay? Hardship, extreme hardship. We see this a lot. I'm just going to use the example of those who survived the Great Depression. Now, when we look at their behaviors, they would have these hoarding tendencies. They would have a lot of anxiety and paranoia. They would have a sense that the other shoe is always going to drop. And there's a deterioration, a threat of deterioration to their life and to their circumstances. That habitual mindset can lead to things like, again, workaholism, focusing too much on money. And there's a lot of guilt that comes with that gets handed down to future generations. You should be grateful for any job you have. You should never rock the boat and step up and level up in your life and do anything risky. You're crazy to go after your dreams. You should be more stable, work for corporate America or a factory or whatever. Settle to have that buck, to have that supposed, foundation and security. And that's what kills us. That's what kills our soul. Whether you do come, again, from a long line of slavery or poverty or any other kind of hardship where generation to generation, you're taught to protect everything you have or everything you can hoard and get from deterioration, right? That is not an abundant mentality. That does not work with the law of attraction. That works against manifestation, and we have to let it go. It's not a generational curse, but it's very poor mentality that perpetuates poverty in every single area of your life. Health, mental, emotional well-being, your finances, your relationships, your willingness to step out and do something bold and new with your life, bringing purpose to your life, all of this. So be mindful. The third point I want to make on this is that it needs to end with you. And I want you to to keep in mind that while it is so much hard work to do this, it is the kind of work that will not only benefit you, it will benefit all the people out there who need to do it too and don't have the support to do it. It will also benefit future generations because it's ending with you. And you bring ancestral healing to your bloodline. And I believe even previous lives that don't necessarily play into your current bloodline, because everything is connected. You're healing the past. You're healing the present. You're healing the future. This work could not be more worth it. The benefits are tremendous. And I think not enough of us want to spend the time doing the difficult work and daily task of being mindful, keeping track, seeing a therapist, or reading the books, working through the problems, and taking those toxic habits and replacing them with healthy habits. I think we also have a tendency to get addicted to drama and anxiety and tension. And when we don't have that, when we are left with nothing but peace and being centered, a sense of serenity, we go crazy, bored, and out of our minds. And so we look for problems to cause. We have to understand that all of this extra energy that you're going to have through this process has got to go out somewhere. Don't just try to solve this in therapy. Don't just try to read self-help books or do the meditation practices. Try to incorporate some healthy habits where you can put energy back out in your daily life, like exercise, like offering healings to others, like getting into composing, music, artwork, writing, whatever it is. You have to find ways, get more in touch with nature. Hiking is a great way to be out with nature and exercise at the same time. Energy has to go back out. All of these toxic energies and blocks that have been there for so many generations that you're going to be releasing have to go out of your body. So be active. But this needs to end with you. I feel my family may have been cursed. We've had a lot of trauma and diseases. How can one tell and break it? Well, again, there is no such thing as a curse. What you have to look at with the diseases is whether or not they're hereditary. Is this just something that's being handed down from generation to generation? One of the things with illness is that the older generations didn't talk. They didn't speak. I'm 41. I'm amazed to watch some of the elderly people in my family pass away, and I'm like, why did we not know they had this? If they have it, who else has it? Why did no one talk about how my one great aunt had osteoporosis? We thought she just looked gnarly and bent over, and no one talked about it. They literally treated illness and disease as though it was a shame. They treated it like it was a curse. And since no one talked, the younger generations now are just kind of at a loss, like we're figuring everything out for the first time. It is also possible that it's associated with how they lived. Okay, so a lot of people won't end up having diseases, but because of the lifestyles or where they lived even, it's very possible that it was environmental. I think that at the root of all disease, though, whether this comes from a past life influence or it's current, and I cannot prescribe or diagnose, but I really do believe that we need to look at the mental and emotional state and see how that may have fed the illness, because we see things that manifest in the body crystal clear. It is a guarantee it will eventually manifest based on mental and emotional states. I'll use the example of a closed throat chakra. When I see certain, it's typically a female problem, but I see a lot of girls talk in these little girl voices, and they talk really high pitched, and they've got like this very sort of kiddish way, and that is symbolic of how they're not speaking their true voice. They're not putting their power out there in the world. Well, they tend to have mental and emotional issues in other areas, and eventually it leads to thyroid problems, a lot of sinus issues. You may even see esophageal issues. It builds in the different chakras based on the root cause, okay? I would look there first. I would be surprised if you can't find any patterns here if you look really hard. I have another one here from Jill. One side of my family has generations of women that are emotionally, verbally, and for some of us, physically abused by the men in our lives, including those we were born to and outside relationships. How do you stop the pattern so that your children don't find themselves in the same pattern? The other side of the family struggles with victim and martyrdom syndrome. I've broken out of the pattern, but at times I see it in my child. I think it's unfortunate that sometimes we don't realize we have a problem until we have children, right? And that's why we're talking about generational curses. Sometimes by the time you catch it, it's too late and it's already been handed down. But you can always live by example. And that's all we can ever really do anyways. We have to understand that we can't go in there and fix everybody else, including your children, but you can set a tone for your behavior, what's acceptable, what isn't, and live well. Okay, so the greater you shine, the more they will look. It's not to say that won't upset a lot of them. That may happen too. It doesn't mean you didn't do your job. We want to be realistic that when it comes to things like abuse, that is brainwashing, almost like a cult type of a mentality that gets handed down, where the women in the family would have literally believed that that's their role, that they're deserving of it in some way. That's their destiny, is to be with someone who would mistreat them that way. I think it gets harder as time goes on because it becomes so ingrained in the younger generations that they're in with what I spoke of earlier with the degradation, the self-degradation. They don't feel worthy. So it's not just the area of romantic partnership. It's all areas where you feel unworthy of giving yourself the time, the attention, the self-care, setting the boundaries in different situations. By the time you see it in a love partnership, it's already infiltrated so many other areas. I think, again, therapy is a great tool to help break this down, but mindfulness every day of the different thoughts that you have, the ways you notice that you do this, and yes, keep an eye on your children and discuss it with them. A lot of people decide, I'm going to leave this bad scenario, this generational curse ends with me, but they stay entangled in the family, and the children just pick up on other family members' bad habits. Okay, so just because you're doing the right thing doesn't mean they're not embedded in the system still. You need to have open discussion with them about what's healthy, and if they need to also get in therapy, then so be it. I think then you're talking about being hereditary. I mean, you're not talking about environmental then, so you're just talking about what's hereditary. I think that it's important to understand what things are possibly hereditary. So I would start breaking it down right there. Something like alcoholism or, clinical depression might be not everything that we talked about. A lot of these things are just habits, personality traits that get picked up from the environment that we live in. First of all, know what might actually be handed down to you genetically. I think that the other important thing to remember is that we have past lives. I have a class called Meet Your Guides, and in Meet Your Guides, you meet your Akashic Record Guide. Okay, so that's up on the website for those of you who want to get in touch with your guides. Your Akashic Record Guide is holding all of your past life information that affects you in this life. One consistent thing I've seen over the years in this is that there is unfinished business. If there's a lack of alchemy, changing something from negative to positive, if someone is still fearful, then they will be reborn with those same identical problems, and it'll play out in a different scenario. It's a test. It's an opportunity to learn to do it the right way again and again. You want to also look at what major lessons you feel you're supposed to be addressing with this, and understand that whether you know your bloodline or not, it's bigger than that. It comes from you and your previous lives, and you were probably entangled with that original birth family in those previous lives. This is all scripted in its own way, and it goes back way further than those birth parents. Okay, so look there as well and talk to your Akashic. I did also just want to comment on, Jill had also said in her question here that she had another side of the family that was very victimhood mentality, martyrdom syndrome. That's very much the same as the other side of her family where she said they're abused by men. Okay, what's the difference? It's self-sacrificing beyond what's healthy. We have a free mini class up here called Stay in Your Lane that could help for those of you who feel that you do that. I don't think it's like a requirement that you feel that for them. I feel that in my own personal life, I have gone through the changes, and I started that really young. Like 9 years old, my mother kicked me out for the first time, and I felt I really started on that journey, realizing I was on my own. I was going to have to figure it out. And through my teens and my 20s and my 30s, I built a life for myself where I didn't really deal with any of those people. And I did break those curses as much as I could. For everything that I understood, I did. But it wasn't until recently, and I've still only just begun on that process, where I'm feeling for my family members. Because for so long, you can see them as the villains. And I would say it wasn't even until yesterday I cried for the first time for my grandmother, who was just nasty. I mean, she was just nasty. And I just felt for her because I realized all the abuse that she went through, all the poverty and the Great Depression, and what she had to take care of with the divorce during those times when it wasn't conventional, and why she ended up the way she did. And it's not excusing them. It is just being able to look back at who influenced you the most and to say, you know what? It is the human condition to suffer. And we don't all handle it the best. We don't all go high. A lot of us just go low. And even when we do go high, sometimes we often just don't do it enough. And we want to try and sort of honor their challenges and understand that those were lessons for us to do better. I think that in saying to, like, my grandmother yesterday, for example, Grandma, I am using your experience to do better. I think it brings that ancestral healing in. And because we have karmic debt, my grandmother is now obligated to bring healing to the family. And she is receiving that healing that she never got as well. Just because someone passes away, the work continues. So there is karmic debt throughout the line. This is why a lot of people who receive a reading hear from relatives they don't like, or they are shocked to hear from, and they're saying, I'm helping you with this part of your life. Why are they helping with that part of life? Because through their bad example or behavior, that's what they robbed them of. And they now have karmic debt to replace that. So I do think that it's important, Bernadette, to cry for them, to feel for them, to have compassion for the human condition, but it's not required for you to start moving on and cutting those cords. Excellent. So we are going to move on to what do you do? The first thing I want to talk about here is self-love, self-care. You have got to be willing to stop being that martyr, stop being that victim, stop sacrificing in as many areas of your life as you can possibly identify that you do it. It's easiest to spot it in relationships because there's so much emotion there, and emotions really detect where problems are. But it's important for you to stop over the course of your day and look at your habits, look at your schedule, look at the times when you push yourself harder and further than you should. Look at how many areas in your life you deny yourself of something and you say, well, I haven't earned it yet. I haven't earned it yet. Will you ever earn it? Why do you need to earn it? Who told you you need to earn it? You being alive has earned it. Okay, life is difficult. Get those words out of your head, what people have put into your mind about how you're unworthy. You need to release and replace it with something else. Number 2, you have got to do the shadow work. We have a mini class, shadow work, what is it and how do you do it? There are some airy-fairy concepts about shadow work these days. It's kind of a hot topic in the spiritual world. Real shadow work is about sitting with the ugliness, especially in a situation like this, and the pain, where it came from, and understanding how you're feeding it. What is your responsibility in it? When people talk about shadow work, they often talk about healing to your pain, healing to your pain. How about where you're toxic? How about taking ownership of how you're toxic and handing it down, spreading it out to the rest of the world? Let's talk about number 3. Probably you're gonna need therapy. So if you have any stigma against therapy, you may want to swallow your pride and get over that real quick. There are amazing trained professionals out there that you can trust. And I know sometimes that field gets a bad rap for being limited and over medicating and whatever. You don't have to do any of that. You're not trapped. You can put one foot in the water and see how it goes. You can trust your own intuition through the therapy process. And it isn't going to swallow you up alive. You can moderate. I think, though, that people need to go into therapy a little bit more honest. I think a lot of people don't bring up the things that are happening, and they're not mindful during the week. And so we are overlooking a lot. I don't think that therapy is the type of thing you were meant to stay in for life. And I don't believe that medications are going to fix this type of thing. So I think you do need to be careful. I also think that we need to be honest about the type of therapy that we need. Sometimes you need to go to a therapist who's kind of gonna be lending an ear, not coddle you necessarily, but be kind and gentle and hear your story and offer you solution. But other times you need to be ran over like a freight train. You need someone to pull the toxicity out of you and to show you where it is. There are different therapists for different things. So understand where you are, pick one that suits you, and don't be shy to talk about behavioral modification. And a therapist can help you with that. You can do this on your own. Where are the areas in your life that need to change? And you can do the deep work, the soul searching, the digging into the root issues, and alter it at the same time. Kind of like Bernadette's question, do I have to do this first? No, you don't. So make change now. Number 4, be the one for others that you did not ever get to see. Give to others what you never got, and encourage others with the strength that you found but did not inherit. So understand that there isn't anyone who comes from a toxic line who has been battered and bruised who doesn't have big purpose here to not only heal themselves, but to go out and heal others and shine a light to the world. Use it. Use it. It needs to end with you. In regards to the first part of your question, Molly, am I minimizing my pain by saying, well, so-and-so has it worse than me, so I should shut up, I should be grateful, take your focus off yourself and give to others? That's a genuine part of becoming a healer, is being able to say, sometimes when I'm feeling in the ghetto, it's because I'm focusing way too much on myself. And I really just need to take my mind off myself and focus on how I can help others. That's a sign that you're a healer. That's a wonderful thing. But that's not going to get you out of the shadow work. That's not going to get you out of the tough work that you also have to do. Yes, they're suffering. So are you. So it isn't, yet again, what I'm seeing tonight in the questions is a lot of black and white thinking, right? Which is how you've been raised. Black and white thinking. It's a yes or no. It's a good or bad. It's a right or wrong. And that's not how this is. It's both. You are human beings suffering in the human experience. They are as well. Yes, they may have it worse. But here's the thing. People who go through horrible circumstances are equipped for those circumstances. You're not in that circumstance right now because it's not part of your life path, your life journey. You're here to help them, but they are given what they need to get through it. There are lessons that they're supposed to be learning. There are people around them and circumstances that are there for them to utilize to understand what the lessons are. And they are also an example sometimes for the rest of us, because we all learn from one another's contracts of what needs to change, where light needs to be shown, where we need to alter our behaviors. And poverty is a great, war-torn areas and poverty is a great place to look at it, because those were the first 2 examples that I brought up in this course as well, that when we're looking at people from like the Great Depression or war-torn situations, and we're looking at things like slavery or poverty, we're talking about all the same things. That threatens to be handed down to future generations. Where we see people struggle, we know healing is needed. It doesn't replace the fact that you need to do your own. I also think that it's not up to you to understand. Don't play God. Don't let your ego take over. We have a class up here called How to Check Your Ego in Lightwork and Beyond, and another one called Stay in Your Lane. Essentially what you're trying to do is you're trying to take over areas that are not your own. You're trying to understand what they're going through, why they're going through it, how they're going to go through it. You're trying to understand what your role is in it, or you're sacrificing in your own life to fix it. You're not God. You're not here to fix everything. You're here to do your part, and you have to understand what your part is so that you feel balanced in that. Well, it was a pleasure talking to you guys about this. I certainly hope that it helped. I think the most important thing to remember here is that as you venture out on this journey of healing, you don't try to fix other people. It is not your job to break generational curses by going and fixing your entire family. Okay? You set an example, you shine bright, you stay healthy. Thank you, Polly. Thank you, Spirit. Thanks, everyone.